Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Well, this episode, I figured we'll go to the movies. I'll buy you a popcorn, get you a soda, maybe an M&M's or those minty juju fruit. Well, from the Seinfeld episode where the mint thing fell into the body, nevertheless, not going to do that. But we won't be going to the movies, but we will be discussing a film. It's the Yogi Berra documentary, It Ain't Over. Came out recently, and there was some Q&A sessions around the city with Lindsay Berra, his granddaughter, who's heavily featured in the film, as well as some of the filmmakers involved with it. Wasn't able to attend any of those events, but I did go see the film, and it felt it was something good for us to talk about. And again, if you're a podcast subscriber to this audio podcast, you're getting this exclusive little chat here. So yes, I'm on YouTube and on TV in certain areas, but if you're a podcast subscriber, you get this exclusive content, little wrap-ups after each series, and cool little things like this, little stories, kind of off-the-field type stuff, exclusive for you podcast subscribers. So if you're not already, make sure, look around. There's got to be something somewhere that says subscribe, follow, like, get notified when new content comes up, and you get this cool stuff. Again, get the little wrap-ups after every little series throughout the season, of course, and little stories and little extra bonuses like this we're going to discuss right now, only exclusive for your podcast subscribers. So, as I mentioned before, the film this past weekend was being heavily featured in select theaters around the tri-state area. Now, Lindsay Berra and the director Sean Mullen, I believe, and other people involved were kind of doing Q&As. Now, I wasn't unfortunately able to attend any of the events, but it seemed to be in Regal theaters, so I was able to go to a different Regal theater that was screening the film, and I found a time slot that worked with my schedule. I had to go see it, and it was quite good. I'm not going to say it was the greatest thing ever. Oh my God, you got to see this, but I think if you're a Yankee fan or just a general baseball fan, I found it very enjoyable. Now, the whole crux of it basically gets into how Yogi was kind of an overlooked player during his time. And, obviously when he broke in with the Yankees, that's when, DiMaggio was still there in the late 40s. So he kind of had, the shadow of DiMaggio over him. And, of course, that transitioned to the mantle Whitey Ford Yankees of the 50s and 60s. So it was just kind of just get into it kind of, it was an overlooked player. But of course, when you look at his stats, they're quite amazing. Now, it heavily features his granddaughter, Lindsay Berra, who, if you're on Twitter a lot, she's heavily involved, just with the Yankee family, and of course, promoting her grandfather. Now, a couple of seasons ago, I think during the 2020 COVID lockdown, I actually had the museum director from the Yogi Berra Museum, which is in Montclair, New Jersey, on as a guest. And again, we did a Zoom interview. It's kind of first doing that. So if you want to go back to the YouTube page of Section 420 Talkin Yankees, scroll back around 2020 and you'll see she has a giant Yogi shirt, so you can't miss it. And you want to catch that interview. And Lindsay Berra, get heavily involved in this film, not only as a narrator, but also on camera as well. So kind of dual roles in there as well. So, I'm sure, just knowing about her, I'm sure she quarterbacked a lot of this, just pushing to get this project done. So even though she wasn't the director, she probably kind of was more or less, nevertheless. But kind of gets how Yogi first broke in the league a little bit, just because he's kind of different. He's not your typical 6'2", 230-pound athlete. He's kind of the short, stubby Italian guy, and kind of how the New York press made fun of him initially, and then over time how he won everybody over just from his great stats and the play, and of course the championships, which you all like. And and it's kind of interesting. They had they showed a clip from 2015 during the All-Star game there, where they, I guess, 5 of the greatest then living players of the time, which included Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Johnny Bench, Sandy Koufax, and the 5th was Yogi Berra. And Yogi Berra is kind of seen as the kind of the 5th wheel there. But you look at his stats compared to those other guys, and he has 3 MVPs, which is more than any of them. He's got 10 World Series rings, which is more than all those guys combined. And it's like, wow, what's this amazing player here who you don't think of him as a Babe Ruth, you don't think of him as a Ted Williams, but the stats he put up is just amazing. So kind of brings a little recognition to that. I don't want to get into too much of the stuff and spoil it, but there were a couple of interesting tidbits which I didn't know. Again, if you're a general Yankee fan, you probably heard 80% of the stories that are in this film anyway, but there were a couple of cool ones, such as dealing with Branch Rickey. Now, Yogi, originally from St. Louis, supposedly gets the story there. They had a local trial for local people to try out for the Cardinals. Now, Branch Rickey at the time was more infamously, he's the one who they credit bringing in Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers, but at the time he was with the Cardinals organization, and he took a look at Yogi, but they were only willing to offer him a minor league deal, not a major league deal, and so kind of lowballed Yogi, which was people were kind of puzzled. Why, hey, this is a great player, great hitter, why are you doing this? Now, it turns out that Branch Rickey knew he was going to the Dodgers, and that's why he kind of kept Yogi in his back pocket. His plan supposedly was once he gets to the Dodgers and he already knew about Berra, then he was going to offer Berra a major league contract. But between those events happening, the Yankees are able to scoop in there and grab Berra first. But it's just funny how, when Branch Rickey was the Cardinals, knowing he was to leave the Cardinals, kind of lowballed Berra there, but say, hey, I want to grab Berra as soon as I get to the Dodgers and build a winning team. But that kind of blew up his face because the Yankees grabbed him first. So, I guess that was one piece of, I guess, little, if I'm going to give away any spoilers, but I don't want to really try to do that. That's an interesting story I never heard of before. And secondly, crediting Bill Dickey, who was, again, a Yankee catcher way before Berra came to the Yankee family. He was the one who actually directly coached Berra. And when Berra got up, first got up for the Yankees, a little sloppy behind the plate, and it was actually Bill Dickey, who also wore number 8 for the Yankees as a catcher, who was the one who kind of personally tutelaged him to becoming, again, a much better defensive catcher. And so that was something I never heard of before. And it was cool to see other things, like, for example, funny, all these years I never really heard Jackie Robinson's voice. You always see the images of him, but actually had a news clip of both Berra and Jackie there just talking after a game, and actually heard Jackie's voice. And again, all these years, I've never heard the sound of Jackie Robinson's voice, so that was cool to see that, and some old black and white clip they got there. And then, of course, there once I guess Berra cemented himself as an all-star caliber player. Then kind of shows how much of a pitch man he was, which I kind of knew a little bit, but not as much. For Yoo-Hoo and other products like that. Then after obviously gets into the whole, his transition into a player coach, and then of course going to the Mets organization there and spending some time with them, and of course the whole. The whole controversy in the 80s between him and George Steinbrenner after Berra was fired. And then, of course, Berra had that chip on his shoulder and stayed away from Yankee Stadium for, almost over a decade. And then finally coming back in 99. And, of course, we remember that magical game. That was the one where he came back. Don Lawson threw the first pitch out to him. And, of course, Cone and Girardi combined and had that perfect game, which is something, just right out of a movie, which is amazing. So it had that whole piece. And, of course, getting a little deeper insight, I've heard a lot of things about his wife, Carmen, good things. And they spent a good time just talking about the relationship between Yogi and Carmen and how he courted her, but really it was more her courting him. But again, don't want to give away too much of the film. So that was cool stuff. So, the film itself had plenty of Yankees in there. Derek Jeter gave some interviews. He gave some lines there that Randolph on. Don Mattingly, who actually cursed a little bit, if I can remember. So that was kind of interesting. Joe Girardi. So had plenty of the Yankee family. Oh, yeah, Nick Swisher, who, again, he's a big Yogi guy. So you got to see a little Swisherlicious, Ron Guidry. And, of course, some of the old Yankees from that period. I think Tony Kubek, who's still alive, shockingly. I think he's like 87. Bobby Richardson, have some quotes from him. So those are probably like some of the last of the guys. One interesting note was Ralph Terry. He also was on camera speaking. Now, Terry actually passed away about a year ago, which makes me think that this project might have been a couple of years in the work, and maybe things just got slowed down with COVID and whatnot. And some of these interviews did seem like that might have been a little old of it. Actually, Vince Scully was there as well. Now, he kind of somewhat recently passed away. So just kind of gives me the feeling that this might have been like a 3-4 year project of them trying to put this whole together. And even when they had Jeter on camera, it looked like he was sitting with the backdrop of like the Miami Marlins Stadium. So this might have been done when Jeter was still working with the Miami Marlins organization. So again, this might have been almost like 3 or 4 years in the making that finally put this together. But just a little side note from there. So, it's just cool to see the Yankees stuff there. So quite enjoyable. Maybe it ran a little too long. I think they have it clocked at 98 minutes. So they probably stuffed a little extra stuff in there just to get it over the hour 30 mark there, just so it could kind of be a quote-unquote feature film. I mean, even though anything over hour 10 is a feature film, but nevertheless. So little things might have dragged a little bit, but overall, very insightful. If you're a Yankee fan, you probably heard 80% of the stories in there already. And, of course, Yogi passed away for a while, so all the clips of him were just from previous interviews, so nothing really new there. But again, I would say I would recommend go see it. It's enjoyable. Maybe learn a few things about Yogi maybe didn't know, and just to kind of just take a step back and just, again, the stats he put up. And I mean, he would go seasons where he would only strike out 12 times in a season. That's it. I mean, imagine someone like even Judge, who's a great player. He could strike out 12 times in like 2 weeks, So just the amazing stats he put up, even though it was a bit of a different era. So it ain't over. It's in theaters, select theaters. I don't think it's going to be like around too long. So if you have interest in seeing it in a theater, at least, I would go recommend, just hit Google, find a theater nearby. If you're out in the middle of like Kansas or Idaho, probably none of the theaters in the Caribbean, and he's got to wait so you could stream it, which I'm sure you could do as well. But quite an enjoyable film. And again, Yogi Berra just kind of an overlooked player, just maybe because not only his size, but just, because he kind of played a great stars, like legends like DiMaggio and Mantle, and well, you understand how you can get lost in the shuffle there. But if you look at the back of his baseball card, probably had one of the more tremendous seasons you can even think of. And of course, afterwards he retired, just became a great pitch man. Of course, not only with Yoo-Hoo, but of course we all know the Aflac commercial. He's in the barber chair. Again, that's another kind of thing you just don't even think about. Like, wow, this guy really did some commercials. He was in. You don't realize, but collectively, and it's quite of a great life. Spoke about his time in the service. He was involved in the D-Day invasion of Normandy. So just had an incredible life, which, again, I think it's definitely worth a film to look back at on. So that's the film review. It ain't over. Check it out. I give it my recommends, and we'll catch you next time.